In April 2024, ByteDance, the Chinese parent of TikTok, lost control over its most valuable international asset. US lawmakers advanced legislation to force a sale or outright ban of TikTok's American operations. Overnight, $20 billion in annual revenue, 170 million US users, and the company's global influence were put at risk. ByteDance's board faced a binary choice: surrender ownership or see TikTok erased from the world's largest advertising market. The balance of power in global social media shifted, not by competition but by political decree. This confrontation exposed a structural vulnerability at the core of cross-border tech empires. ByteDance had built TikTok into a cultural and commercial juggernaut, but its control was always conditional, subject to the shifting priorities of foreign governments. The US action revealed how quickly regulatory risk can become existential and how little leverage even the most sophisticated global players retain when national security is invoked. The incentives that once drove ByteDance's global expansion now threaten to unwind its entire US business. For all its technical prowess and market dominance, ByteDance's American empire rested on a foundation that could be revoked overnight. The stakes were not theoretical. Billions in capital and the future of a digital public square were on the line. TikTok's rise was engineered through relentless product iteration and algorithmic mastery, but its American success depended on a permissive regulatory environment. ByteDance tried to reassure lawmakers by promising data separation and local oversight. It set up US-based data centers and hired American executives. As US-China relations deteriorated, these assurances lost credibility. By 2023, bipartisan consensus in Washington had hardened. Chinese ownership of a platform with massive US reach was no longer tenable. The legislative machinery accelerated, compressing ByteDance's options. Attempts to localize governance and firewall data were no longer seen as sufficient. The context that mattered was not technical compliance but political alignment, and ByteDance was on the wrong side of that line. The dominant mechanism was regulatory leverage, specifically the use of legislative deadlines to force a binary outcome. US lawmakers structured the bill to leave ByteDance with no room for incremental concessions. The legislation set a hard deadline: divest TikTok's US operations to an approved American buyer within 270 days or face a nationwide ban. This was not a negotiation. It was a forced choice, engineered to eliminate ambiguity and prevent drawn-out legal or regulatory maneuvering. ByteDance's lobbying machine responded at full tilt. The company spent tens of millions on legal teams, public relations, and direct appeals to lawmakers. It mobilized TikTok creators and users to flood congressional offices with calls and messages. Influencers posted videos urging followers to save TikTok, and the company's US CEO testified before Congress, emphasizing American jobs and economic impact. One creator with over 10 million followers posted, "If TikTok goes, so does my livelihood. Congress is deciding my future without ever meeting me." But the mechanism was designed to be immune to pressure. The bill's language precluded judicial delays and limited executive discretion. ByteDance's core asset, its proprietary recommendation algorithm, could not be easily transferred or replicated in a divestiture. Any sale would likely strip TikTok of its competitive edge, reducing its value and strategic relevance. The financial calculus was brutal. If ByteDance sold TikTok, it would be forced to divest under distressed conditions, with buyers aware of the ticking clock and the company's lack of alternatives. The price would reflect not just the forced nature of the sale, but also the uncertainty over whether the algorithm, the heart of TikTok's success, could legally or technically be included. If the algorithm stayed in China, the US version of TikTok would become a shell, losing the very feature that made it dominant. If ByteDance refused to sell, the ban would trigger an immediate loss of US revenue, partnerships, and user base, with ripple effects across global advertising and content ecosystems. The regulatory mechanism left ByteDance with only two doors, both marked exit. The company's global ambitions collided with the hard limits of national sovereignty, enforced not by market forces, but by statute. The inflection point came when the bill passed the House with a veto-proof majority. The Senate signaled alignment, and the White House endorsed the measure. ByteDance's last remaining lever, delay, was removed. The company's legal appeals could slow implementation, but the statutory deadlines were clear and insulated from procedural stalling. US advertisers began contingency planning, shifting budgets to rival platforms. Talent agencies and creators explored alternatives, hedging against a sudden loss of reach. The market priced in the probability of a forced sale or shutdown, with analysts slashing revenue forecasts and partners demanding exit clauses. ByteDance's internal assumption that political risk could be managed through engagement collapsed in real time. The company's leadership faced a scenario where every move was dictated by a legislative clock, not by negotiation or technical compliance. This episode demonstrates how regulatory risk can override market logic in global technology. For multinational platforms, the illusion of borderless scale is shattered when national security becomes the organizing principle. The TikTok case sets a precedent. Ownership structure, not just product behavior, can trigger existential intervention. It also signals to other foreign-owned platforms that legal firewalls and local data centers may not be enough. The mechanism, legislative leverage, with hard deadlines, can be replicated by any government with the political will. The message is clear. The rules of engagement for global tech are being rewritten, and the cost of misreading political risk can be catastrophic. If you rely on a global platform for your business, your voice, or your community, the boundaries of digital empires are now drawn by lawmakers, not just by code or capital. ByteDance's gamble was not in building TikTok, but in assuming that scale and popularity would guarantee permanence. The US regulatory mechanism proved otherwise. In the end, the fate of a global platform was decided not by users or markets, but by a legislative clock that ran out. In the new era of digital sovereignty, control is provisional, and the rules can change without warning. The architecture of global power is being rebuilt one statute at a time,